Welcome to the West Michigan Marketing Show, where we spotlight marketing leaders and business innovators who are making an impact in our community. I'm Rebecca VanDenBerg, and in this episode, I am thrilled to introduce Jennifer Kok of Next Wave Business Coaching. Jennifer helps businesses grow and explore where they can take their business to the next level. And today we're going to explore her journey and her passion for working with businesses here in West Michigan. So let's dive in.
Hi, Rebecca. Thanks for having me today.
Awesome. Jennifer, please start off with just introducing yourself, sharing a little bit about your background, and let us get to know you.
Awesome. So yeah, I've been in the entrepreneurial space for about 27 years. And when I say that, it's like, I get that. Are you kidding me? It's been 27 years already. I started my first business. I bought into a franchise called Cookies by Design. And 2 days later, delivered my second daughter. So it was a very unexpected start to entrepreneurship, but I weathered it. I went on to create my own franchise called Cupcake by Design and owned that business for a total of 20 years. I ended up selling it in the fall of 2018. And the next step for me when the pandemic happened was I was watching what was going on with our local businesses. And I thought, you know what? I've weathered a storm. I've pivoted. I kind of understand what it takes to build a 20-year business. So that is what I do now. I'm very passionate about helping local businesses reach the 5-year mark because I know how hard it is to get to 5-year. The statistics are not in our favor. And so I'm a business coach. I love working with creative entrepreneurs. They're usually in their first 5 years. They haven't quite hit that $500,000 in revenue yet. And we focus on 3 things: growing your revenue, improving those profits, and how can you start paying yourself more?
Awesome. Those are really can be overwhelming to people. That's to get to the 5-year mark. They've obviously scraped and they figured it out, right?
Right.
And so sometimes it's overwhelming to how do you take it to that next level? How do you evaluate yourself? Because you're always in the mud, if you will, and trying to evaluate it without an outsider's help is sometimes a big thing to bite off on yourself and keep all the daily things going. So
exactly. Totally. And what I always see too is, when you first start out, you've got warm market, friends, family, all these people that know somebody, right? But you get to a point where the people that got you to where you are today cannot get you to that next level. And so what do we need to do to get to that next level? And like you said, you're in the mud, you're in the weeds. It's hard to see that big picture. And it's also sometimes can be really intimidating, and some other things start coming up as business owners and, mindset and just kind of what am I supposed to be doing next? So that's where you bring in somebody like me that can help you see that big picture and get you some, clarity again and get you back on a growth roadmap.
What do you think is one of the most common struggles that people are facing at that stage in their business?
So, one of the biggest things, especially when we're talking about marketing, right, is when you first start out, you're scrappy. You take any client that comes along and is willing to pay you. You do the work. Half the time, you're not even quite sure if your profit margins are strong. You're just out there just trying to, get some business, get some testimonials, get some Google reviews, just get some momentum going. Well, we get to a point where all of a sudden it's like, am I really making any money? So that's the first thing. Like, let's really reevaluate our profit margins and making sure our pricing is in line. And then the second thing is, you have to start speaking to a particular audience. And I'm sure, Rebecca, you see this all the time. The big net that you casted when you first started worked for a while. It caught a few fish, but it's not going to get you to the next level. And I feel like in today's world, we are so bombarded. I mean, the statistics are crazy about how many messages we get every day. And so how are you going to get remembered as a business owner? How are you going to, who's going to remember that you do a photography or you're an interior designer when you're trying to speak to everybody? And so for me, I like to help them figure out who is your micro audience. And it might not even be a who. It could be what is unique about your thoughts, your thought leadership, your perspective. It could also be that too. You could lean into that, which then was going to start helping you kind of start attracting people instead of chasing everybody and hoping they say yes.
I'm seeing this everywhere. is the specialty audience. So you start with, like you said, the broad who you serve, and then you see where can you hyper focus, or the micro audience. I love that as a term. It reminds me of the micro influencer, but the specialty audience. You used photography, for example. Now you have wedding photographers, baby photographers, corporate headshot photographers. And I'll tell you, they're different, because if you hire one to do one or the other, and you're not going to get good results. Like I think there's a lot of value in what you just said, having a clear understanding of who that audience is, but then having your marketing language, materials speak to that micro audience is killer. And it can be applied to the way you write your blogs, to the way you write your website, to which social media platform you decide to go with. I mean, there's so many things that can affect. So I think, and I know personally, we're pivoting from a more general certain audience. We've micro identified several audiences that we go after. So that's really, really good. Do you see that as a trend that is changing because of the volume of advertising messaging that we're bombarded with?
I do. Yes. You can get information anywhere, right? We can just go out there, get information anywhere. And a lot of it just doesn't speak to you. And so you spend a lot of time siphoning through all these messages. And not only to what you said, it's so powerful. You now can write your blogs better. You can write your marketing messaging better. You can write your social media better. But what do we mean by better? Better where your client or your ideal person that you're trying to reach, that you want to sell to, all of a sudden you can really pour into them. You get to know their pain points a little better. You get to know their tics and their habits and, what makes them buy. And you can really speak directly to that, so they feel like it's almost a one-on-one conversation. And the other thing that I see that happens when you choose a micro audience or choose a thought leadership is you save a heck of a lot of time. When we first start businesses, we're willing to meet with anybody and everybody. So we're having coffees all over town. We're going to every networking place in town. Well, are a lot of those really serving you? Probably not. And so when you know who you want to speak with and you know your messaging, now you get to be a little more selective about where you spend your time.
100%. I agree with that 100%. How do you coach people through that? So does it really become obvious to them, or do you think that it's a harder sell?
It's a harder sell. There's so much fear around it. And the fear comes from this: I'm going to alienate people. I'm going to limit my revenue. I'm not going to be able to, attract as many people if I speak to less people. So it feels counterintuitive, right? So we have to get them over that hump. And how do we get them over that hump? Well, first of all, we really dive into, what do you want to be known for? Who do you want to work with? So I have kind of a 3-step approach. Is it an industry? So for instance, I was working with a photographer a few years ago, and she was tired. She was burned out. She was doing the babies and the families and, doing all of the different types of photography. And after diving into what she loved and her passion, she was very passionate about decorating, decor. So she leaned into real estate photography.
Yeah.
Well, now that's all she does.
Mm-hmm.
Her business 4 times within a year, because now she actually knows where to go spend her time. She spends her time with real estate and those type of networking professional organizations. And it's very clear. And then over time, you can raise your prices too, because you become such an expert. So that's an example in industry. The other thing I talk about is thought leadership. Is there something unique or different? So for instance, I owned a brick and mortar cookie and cupcake business for 20 years. Well, I didn't go out there and say, hey, I'm a cookie business, I'm a cupcake business. I went out there as a thought leader in gifting. So I would go and talk to corporations, and I would talk about, what is the power in corporate gifting? What is the power in giving thank you gifts? What is the power in employee gifts? And I used our product. So I could have been selling candles, cupcakes, cookies, whatever. My thought leadership was gifting. And so I hung out and talked to human resource people. I met with a lot of administrative assistants. So that was my thought leadership. And then the third category that we dive into is your ideal client. So I had a gal who was starting her cosmetic, hairstyling business and was just trying to get people in her chair. She had curly hair, so she really knew a lot about curly hair. So she marketed to people with curly hair. Does that mean she only cut people with curly hair? No, she helped men and women and all different types of hairstyles, but that she became known. That was her ideal client. So those are kind of the 3-step that we start with. And we kind of look at where have you had success in the past? What are you excited about? And we have to just try it. Nothing's forever.
Yeah.
And another thing I tell them to overcome the fear is try it for 90 days. And that doesn't mean you can't help other people. Just because you're helping the woman with curly hair doesn't mean you can't also cut the 2-year-old's first haircut. But I think we feel that way as entrepreneurs, like, oh, if I pick a lane, I can only do that lane.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Do you have any, I know you shared a few examples. Do you have any other success stories that reflect that audience, the growth, as far as you said there was one that was 4X, you said she micro, yes. What was that one again? Could you share that
one? She
was
a photographer and she micro audienced with real estate photography.
Yes. It's interesting when those overlap with demand, booming markets.
Sure.
If she happened to hit it with the rise in the Airbnb thing, right? There's that overlap. So having somebody who can have a perspective of analyzing markets and trends, that's a big piece. I think as a business owner, I probably didn't know early on where to go for that market research. And so having an outsider with helping with marketing planning and things, pull in some of that research, I think that's valuable because, just a Google search, you don't know if you're getting accurate information anymore.
Right. Yeah. Or where the information's coming from. Yeah. That's scary.
So that's cool. Okay. So let's bring that into like West Michigan and a local focus. What are some things that businesses can do to tailor their marketing here that really apply to the uniqueness of West Michigan and some of those how that overlaps with those strategies that you guys use?
Well, West Michigan is very much a who knows who small world community. In fact, I just came from having coffee with somebody. I walked into the coffee shop. He knew 2 people. I knew someone else. It's very much a who knows who when you are in the small business entrepreneur space. And so what I always recommend is let's take this micro audience after you pick your micro audience and then get out there and network. We can't build a business behind our computers. If we own a boutique or brick and mortar, you cannot stay in the 4 walls. We have to put faces to our business. People have to remember us and they have to get to know us. So now that you know what type of clientele you're looking for or your particular audience, let's go find some of those folks, whether it's a business to business networking event, maybe you pick a certain association or industry profession, or if it's a business to consumer, you're going to go do some pop-up events or some trade shows and then collaborate. So let's say you're a pet groomer, for instance, collaborate with the local vets, collaborate with the pet photographers, collaborate with people that are also working with your ideal audience. That's a key piece. And sometimes it can feel slow growing, I guess, because it is a little bit of a slower approach, but it's a approach of you're building roots that are deep. And, I get referrals from someone I talked to 2 years ago.
Yeah. I have to confess that I will testimony to that strategy in West Michigan, because I've gone through 2 intentional phases where I've done more networking versus when I've pulled back and stayed behind my computer. And the 2 times that the business has seen the most significant growth have been when I've done those intentional pushes into networking face to face. And so I'm a living testimony to that concept. I've lived it. I've pulled back. I've pushed in. I've done it both in multiple, a couple of times. So, and early on, it was a different networking with a different audience. It was my first audience, and then, midway was networking with a different audience, and now it's it's same thing. So, wow, yeah, you struck a nerve there. I'm guilty of that.
Well, we all are. And I think we go in seasons. I think sometimes we can get a little burned out with it. And that's where I feel, once again, when you know who you're trying to find, you can say instead of saying no to somebody, you can say your best yes. Maybe you don't spend coffee with everybody that asks you, you do it intentionally. And so that can help you save a little bit of time and avoid the burnout.
Yeah, for sure. So let's look ahead to some of the, not really future predictions, but where do you think things are going for small businesses? We talked about what's maybe changed and what's evolved. What do you think are some new opportunities for small to medium-sized businesses to kind of really look at as technology changes, as the West Michigan continues to grow, kind of future outlook?
I tell you, at times it feels tough out there for small businesses. Lately, I've been, reading a lot about restaurants struggling to get people, locally owned restaurants to get people to come and dine with them, boutiques type businesses like that. And I feel like we have to put on our service hat, and our service hat has to be a customer experience hat. So for small businesses to really kind of pave their way, continue to succeed, continue to grow, you have to put your customer first and speak really clearly to them, which is where the marketing messaging comes in. And the only way to know it to speak to them is to get to know them. So asking them, they want to support you. They don't want to see small businesses close. West Michigan loves our small business community. It's powerful. And small businesses are powerful. They're what I call the boots on the ground. They're the ones that hire our teenagers to work at their businesses. They're the ones that march in the 4th of July parade. They're the boots on the ground. They're very connected to our nonprofit. But I feel like we have to get connected with our community and get connected with your customers on a more experience level, which isn't just transactional. It's more about how are you making them feel.
I have to tell you, my husband and I were just talking about this last week. I brought up the restaurant closing trend that we're hearing about. And we've got some personal experience with watching restaurant business owners. We know a couple are really close and who've done it for 30 years. And we've seen really successful ones, and we've seen that other owners take over and it really tank. And the thing that you just pointed out is exactly what we both observed. The days of the restaurant owner, the manager walking through the restaurant and talking to the people in the restaurant booth, that doesn't happen. You go to a chain restaurant, you go to it's a colder experience.
Right.
The ones that are still successful, those small hometown restaurants where the owners are visible, they're out in the floor. We even remembered seeing that when we were in Traverse City on a vacation. There was a manager. He was everywhere doing everything. And we saw it and we felt like it was a cool place to support because of it. That guy we both said he deserved to be paid more, because you could see that his hands were in everything. He's not afraid to wash the table, mop a floor, serve a dish. And then he's also talking to people. And I would say I could probably, of 10 restaurant visits in the last couple of months, I can think of maybe one of maybe like a chain restaurant where a manager has come by and asked, how was your meal? And what you talked about describes that connectivity, that experience, that making a connection. And honestly, if there are restaurant business owners listening, that's what's missing, is that personal connection. And so you hit it on the nail. And we're not, my husband's not a marketer. He's just an observer.
He's a customer that we want to come back. And honestly, business owners need to think about, how can we get our customers to come back multiple times? We don't want them just one transaction a year. Do the data, run the numbers. How often are your customers purchasing from you? And what can we do to encourage a second purchase, a third purchase, whatever that number is, increase that number? Because that's less costly to go after your current customers as far as to market to them and encourage a second purchase or a third purchase, whatever it is. But it comes down to experience. People, we're kind of feeling the effects of the isolation that we had in 2020. And so there's a big push for community. There's a big push for connection. So whether you have a brick and mortar, can you create events? Can you collaborate with other business owners and bring them in? Do pop-ups. If you're service-based, what are you doing? How are you taking that experience to the next level? And I always say, ask your customers. Send a survey out. Use something like SurveyMonkey and just ask. Find some key questions. And maybe there's a product or a service they would love for you to offer that could be a very easy pivot for you, not creating the whole wheel, but something that could just bring them in, because then they feel really proud about it. When I owned the cupcake business, that was a fun one to market, right? We're talking
Yeah.
about cupcakes.
Yeah.
But when we would have contests and let people choose a flavor or submit flavors, it was overwhelming. And we would get recipes from grandma, and it became very heartfelt. And then, when you choose their wacky flavor or whatever, they would tell everybody, so how can you bring your customers into your daily for some type of just fun event or experience so that they can then go be your super fans? That's what we need. We need our customers to become our super fans, and then they go tell people about it.
That's awesome. Well, you led me into my next question about marketing tools. Surveys, doing surveys is is a great idea. I think businesses should do them at least every couple of years at a minimum. One, to understand like customer satisfaction. Yes, you might be getting reviews, but maybe they're missing something. And I found, but then the ideas and how to get them involved. And the other thing that I found really interesting, if you don't necessarily, we assume we know what the customers value. And there is a survey question, and I forget who it was. I think it was Mike McAllowitz, and that was from one of his books. Ask your customers not what you could get better at, but what you do well. And when they answer the question of what you do well, they will communicate what they value. The thing that you do well, maybe it's your responsiveness, maybe it's your ability to solve problems, or whatever it is. Let's say if it's responsiveness, then they value their time. And so I found that to be wonderful, because we're trying to guess at what those struggles or what they value sometimes when you're in that first few years stage that you're talking about. So asking them what you do well after you've had enough experience, then you can pinpoint what they value. And I found that to be a wonderful tip. But surveys could be used for lots of reasons. So SurveyMonkey is a great one. Even if you have any kind of a website form builder, you can make your own questionnaire. You can just send them an email with 3 questions. Make it really short, though. That'd be make it short and sweet. Like
short and
3
sweet,
to 5 questions is be my recommendation.
Yeah. No, you just made me think of a client that I worked with. She has a boutique in Anchorage, Alaska. And her business is, you bring your donations to her, she sells them, and then 30% she donates to a local charity in Anchorage, Alaska. So it's a fashion conscious resale boutique, or, a conscious, community boutique for fashion. She assumed that her customers came to her because they wanted to donate to the charities. She assumed that that's what was driving people into her 4 doors was, oh, I can buy something, but it's really about the money gets donated to the charities. Well, after we did a survey and asked her questions, most of them didn't even realize that was happening.
Wow.
Her customers valued a cute outfit, fashion at a discount, and the fact that it was sustainability, that it was, these items weren't going into the landfill, it was being repurposed. It had nothing to do with the charity. She was blown away as a business owner, because in her mind, that's what she built. That was what was important to her. So she assumed people were coming in for the same reason. So ever since we learned that information, well, guess what? We could change our marketing. We became a, fashionable, come get the latest spring fashions at a huge discount, and her sales increased and her profit increased because more people are coming in, more people are telling other people about her business, and it just had that, that trickle effect. So that's a perfect example of what you're referring to, is don't assume you know what your customers, like you said, value.
I think that's a question or a topic that we have with our clients on a pretty routine basis, because when we're building websites for a business owner, it's to their liking, right? But we really have to have a conversation about, okay, you might like this, and this might be your personal preferences, but is your client going to like it? Is your target audience going to like, just one age factor, what text size we use based on the age factor. If something is specifically for people 65 and older, we better use a bigger font size than, so something small like that. But business owners sometimes have to get out of their own way and let's put the customer's hat on. I had a call with somebody the other day, and he's, I forget what we're targeting, but I was like, put the so-and-so's hat on and say, think, how would they think, right?
Right.
We really have to reframe things like that. And also, just as another little example, how people are viewing your marketing materials and how they're consuming it makes a huge difference, whether it's on mobile or on desktop. So depending that understanding who the audience is and how they interact with your brand is so important to not wasting time and money.
Right, exactly. And not getting results, right?
Right. Or getting right. It's hard because you want people to succeed, and then you've seen what they've done for, where they've spent their money. And when you show them what the return is, they're not happy. It's not great. They're not convinced that a different marketing approach is going to work, but it's the audience. That's one of the key factors. If they've overlooked it or missed that step, boy, it sometimes takes a long time to recover from that.
Yeah.
Well, neat. Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground. One of the things I like to ask is, what if somebody is just getting started in marketing? Obviously, you specialize in coaching, you've got experience. What are some things you think maybe people overlook when it comes to the space of marketing? But if there's somebody out there who's, let's say, a marketing college student, what are some pieces of advice you would give somebody who's just getting started in marketing?
I feel like the biggest thing is to find a mentor.
Mm.
I always say it's the who's in business that are going to get you success, the who's in your career. So find a mentor, find somebody that's willing to kind of show you the ropes a little bit and listen. I feel like, especially as we just get started, I always say there's a reason I do not work with startup business owners, because I always say they're like the teenager who thinks they know everything. And that's great. You do. It's your passion. It's your baby, right? So you got to go figure it out, get your feet wet a little bit, fall down a little bit, and then you're more willing to listen. Well, the same can be true for anyone starting anything, right? They're so excited about it that they live a little bit of tunnel vision. So I always say, find a mentor, find somebody that's been there, done that for a little bit, and be willing to listen.
That's awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. Well, let's tell people where they can find you and how they can learn more about your services and what you guys do.
The best place is to go to my website, which is nextwavebusinesscoaching.com. I'm also on LinkedIn a ton, Jennifer Owens Kok, last name is K-O-K. And I do have a 3-step to boost your profit, and I can send you the link to that. It's actually a case study on the client that I talked about from Anchorage, Alaska, how we boosted her profits 193%. So it's a great resource. It has a lot of marketing tips in there for small businesses that are trying to grow. But yeah, reach out to me. I always love having a good conversation with anybody who's trying to grow a business in West Michigan and beyond. And I also do have a podcast as well called Main Street Success Stories, where I interview other business owners.
Oh, fantastic. Well, I will make sure we have all the links in the notes below. And Jennifer, thank you so much. It's interesting how things collide and ideas spark a connection. I think we have a lot of alignment, and there's a lot of fun and a lot of great work we can both do to help businesses in West Michigan. So thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me. I really appreciate what you do to help the small businesses out there.
Awesome. Thank you.